is usually the case, I will pull this up on my iPad just to make sure that we've got good audio and that everything looks good. So give me a moment there, folks, if you're tuning in live. And this is just a very short pregame show, about a minute and a half or so. And then we'll be getting into the main event. Always takes me a couple of refreshes on this iPad to get this show to come up, unfortunately. So that's why we do this every time. And that is Leah back in the background that you hear.
Hello.
And here it is, part 2. Let's see what sounds good. Okay, the audio sounds good. And we've got a couple people in the chat already just hanging out a little early. Lance is in the house. Kyle's in the house from the West Coast. And so what we've got is a continuation of the show. And I've got Leah on the screen right now. And what I've got next to you, I don't know if you can see it or not, is I've got your video up, A Muggle's Guide to Bitcoin. that fun video on your channel. That was really a cool one. Before we continue from part 1, and this is a continuation from part 1, and where we got cut off, unfortunately the broadcast just got abruptly cut off, we were talking about holding Bitcoin. So just to refresh your memory, that's where we were, buying and holding as opposed to spending. But before we get into that, let's recap who you are, what you're all about and all that. But what about this video? Tell me about this video. It was so cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that actually has been such a fun thing that happened. So, a lot of people probably saw that J.K. Rowling tweeted asking someone to explain Bitcoin to her, which induced a whole variety of responses from
I'm
all
sure.
over crypto Twitter.
It was funny.
Yeah, I think she actually got a little overwhelmed by it all, to be honest. But yeah, I just was like, I should try to think of something that's a little more interesting and creative. And I just had this funny idea to try to explain Bitcoin in Harry Potter terms. So
Okay, there you go.
I made the Muggle's Guide to Bitcoin and, had some fun with my green screen and just
Yeah.
kind of adding some video behind it and making it fun. So yeah, it was a
So,
lot of fun to
so
work on.
folks, you've got to see that video. You've got to go over to her YouTube channel and check out the video. It is hilarious. And now, while we're talking about your channels and all that good stuff, I'm going to real quick show your. That's the part 1 that I'm showing right now was part 1 of this show, just so you all know how to find that. And then I'm showing the Rolex Submariner, which we were talking about. Should you buy the Rolex Submariner or 1 Bitcoin? So that's how this conversation got started. And we're going to continue on that. And then we've got this article. I do want to talk about this Paul Tudor Jones talking about Bitcoin. So I want to talk about that. And then we have the Twitter. For some reason, I got to refresh this. I want to show your Twitter. It is girlgone_crypto. And you got to make sure that you follow her on Twitter. And that page is trying to load. And I will make sure that you see that. Okay, there it is. There's her logo across her banner across the top. So look for that on Twitter. Make sure that you're following her. Be there or be square. And here's her website, and that is leahlovescrypto.com. And then one more thing, I'll show you your Instagram. This is the Instagram, Girl Gone Crypto. So there you go. Follow all of those, folks. And now before we get back into the discussion, again, to preface this whole thing, it was, should you buy a Rolex Submariner? That's on the screen right now. And the non-date version is $7,900. So you can certainly buy a Bitcoin for that. And then if we configure it here, well, actually, you can't quite buy a whole Bitcoin for that, but we'll get there. Then let's see if we configure this as a Rolex date. Let's see what the price jumps up to. I think it jumps up to more like 1 whole Bitcoin if we get a date model. Let me see. All right, so I'm going to select this and see what the price is on that. Okay, so that is $8,950, so $9,000. So 1 Bitcoin's still a little bit over that, but these sometimes sell for over list because they're hard to get, the Rolexes. So it might be about the same price as 1 Bitcoin. So we're going to discuss, Should you buy that or should you buy one Bitcoin? That's one of the things we're going to discuss on the show here today. So let me do this. Let me put you back on full screen, Leah, now that I'm finished kind of showing the screen items. Okay, so when you were cut off, we were talking about buying and holding Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And you were pretty much in mid-sentence. So let's recap. What are your thoughts about why should people buy Bitcoin? What should they do with it?
I mean, I really think it depends on your goals and what you want. I know we'll get into the whole Rolex versus Bitcoin, thing a little bit later on, but in terms of the way that I'm looking at it is what long-term assets do I think that I would want to hold because they will grow in value. And I think for a lot of people in the past, that's been real estate.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, this is something that can continue to grow. But for me, I'm really looking at Bitcoin as that real store of value to where obviously no one can predict the future. I don't have a magic ball, but based on the past and the growth that Bitcoin has seen and based on all of the development happening in the space and
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on, I feel quite bullish on the long-term performance of this asset. And so that's why I'm choosing to buy and hold Bitcoin.
Okay, and another thing I might add to that is people talk about the volatility of Bitcoin, and this is something I learned early on. I got into Bitcoin, and I wanted to kind of like try to time it. I wanted to okay, it spikes way up, I'm going to sell a little bit, and then when it goes back down, I'm going to buy it back. And first of all, it was a lot of effort. And second of all, generally speaking, it's very hard to do that and come out ahead. And so after trying that for a while, and then fortunately running into Adam Meister, this was several years ago, and he convinced me that the whole thing about it is just buy and hold. And then you don't have to worry about it, a lot less stress. You know it's going to be a roller coaster ride going in, and you just hang in there. And once you've been through a few crashes, which we've been through now, it's like you don't even care anymore, right? You just know it's going to recover and it's going to be fine. And so that's why I always recommend that people just buy and hold it, because what happens is you're probably going to get burned if you try to time it, and you're probably going to end up with less Bitcoin. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've had very similar experiences where I've tried to time the market and ultimately it's really tricky to do correctly. And so the way that I kind of approach that is, first of all, I really do just do dollar cost averaging in general, trying to just, hey, this is what I can invest this month. This is what I'm doing. And regardless of the price action, just continuing that momentum of saving.
Slowly just stacking. The newest thing is stacking sats. I don't know who came up with that, but that's pretty cool. So just slowly accumulating. And it's interesting. I had a little exchange on Facebook today, and let me see if I can actually pull this up, because this is the type of thing that we run into in the wild. And let me see here. Okay, so somebody posted on Facebook about the stimulus proposal where they're going to give away a whole bunch of money basically forever. And he said that this will create massive inflation. And I just simply put a comment in here. Let me find my comment, and then you'll see some of the replies are funny. I just said, this is why I own Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like all these comments from people that are like kind of like half educated on this. And a lot of these are the things that I said when I first learned about it. I first learned about it, in like 2010. And I laughed. I said, the government's never going to let that thing keep going. What are you guys, crazy, right? Then I heard about it again in 2012, and I'm like, the government's never going to let that thing keep going, right? Then finally, in 2013, I said, well, I better buy some, right? And so I think this is what it is. We run into all these things. This one guy, Mark Fisher, says, if you've read the news lately about Bitcoin, I would start to worry. It's only a matter of time before they crack down on Bitcoin because of all the ransom demands involving Bitcoin. The anonymous part is going to have to go or it'll be banned. You know, it's not anonymous, folks. I mean, I
Yep.
hate to break the news. It's not anonymous, right? So you hear these things, and then there was another guy that talked about the miners aren't mining it anymore after the halving, that they've stopped mining it. In other words, like it's not being produced anymore, right? And then just because some miners dropped off, right, doesn't mean that it's not being produced. It's still being produced at the same rate. It's different miners, right? And so it's just all these different comments that just tells me we are a long way from people really realizing what this thing is all about. And I'm not sure what we can do about that. What do you have any thoughts on that, Leah? I mean, there's a real education problem on this thing.
Yeah, I think that that's all very interesting and stuff that I experience quite often as well, where people have these kind of half-true opinions, but they have it in their head that it's correct, and so then they're going forward with it very confidently, even if it's not really accurate. And so I think in general, though, that's not a terrible sign. I mean, obviously, we hope that everyone fully
Well,
understands how exactly it works, but the
and,
fact that they know the word Bitcoin and they know there's this thing called a halving and they know there are these things called miners, it shows there's at least some sort of progression.
slowly, yeah, and I think that I have to say, for the first few years that I was in Bitcoin, I didn't say anything about it on any social media, on the channel here. The first time I mentioned it was early 2017, before the big run up. I had Adam Meister and we did an interview with him. And, yeah, I just didn't want to say anything until I was pretty sure that this was a pretty stable thing. And I saw a lot of writing on the wall that this thing probably isn't going to get shut down, that it's probably going to survive, it's probably going to be around. I'm a very conservative, very cautious guy. I mean, for somebody who bought Bitcoin, that's kind of a funny thing to say, right? But I am. And so I didn't want to tell anybody on my channel, I didn't want to tell any of my friends, to buy it until I was pretty sure that it was a good bet. Still a high risk investment, let's face it, high risk, high return, but a pretty solid bet, right? And so about then was when I started talking about it. And then of course there was the big run up, right? And everybody started asking me when it was like 15, 16, 17,000, oh, hey, should I buy this thing, right? And I'm telling them, I'm saying, listen, I personally would not pay more than 5,000 for a Bitcoin. Now I've since changed my position on that, but at the time I was saying 5,000, and I thought that was a lot to pay for Bitcoin. And when I interviewed Adam Meister, we speculated as to whether or not Bitcoin would hit $5,000 by 2020. Okay, this was
Wow.
before the whole run up, right? We were saying, hey, can you imagine if it would hit $5,000 by 2020? And we were speculating, right? So then it hit it, of course, way beforehand and went up almost to $20,000. And everybody's asking me if they should buy, and I said no, I wouldn't buy now. And but some of them did, of course, and then of course some of them sold lower, right? But the thing is, I really think that this thing has now built a foundation that it is a lot more solid. It's slowly but surely getting distributed to more hands, and some of those are strong hands. There are still a lot of whales that own big chunks of Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong; it's still not distributed enough, but it's getting to the point where it's distributed enough to where I don't think one of those whales can totally crash the market. I think there's enough people out there that would buy, and there's enough distribution of it that I think it's getting more and more stable all the time. So that's why now I feel comfortable to talk about it on the channel, and I will even tell people that, hey, if you don't have one full Bitcoin, at least one full Bitcoin, you should really think about it. And I don't tell them to buy it. I don't give financial advice here on the channel, but I certainly wouldn't want to not have a Bitcoin. And so to me, that's where things have gotten. How stable do you feel the Bitcoin network is, and do you feel pretty confident at this point that it's going to be around 10 years from now?
I do. And, similar to you, I don't give financial advice either, so full disclaimer that
Hmm.
I'm not, a technical analyst in terms of price, variations and whatnot. But in terms of the space itself still being around, you talk about whales being able to disrupt the market and crash it. And, the guy that made a comment earlier about miners aren't mining, like there are all these different changes, but I believe that those people would all be disincentivized to harm the network. And so that's part of why I feel good about where we are and where we're going, because
It,
those different
it,
players, that it doesn't serve them
it's
to.
really a genius, the way the whole thing was designed. It's all around incentives because there is
Mhm.
nobody in charge that can step in and say, "Hey, you're misbehaving" or whatever, right? The whole thing has to be designed around a consensus of all the people involved and incentives for them to behave, right?
Mhm.
And so, but here's the thing, all that in place doesn't mean that a big entity like the United States government couldn't come in and throw a whole monkey wrench into the thing. What's your thought about some kind of outside attack like that doing serious harm to Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I think that although I do truly believe that the US government cannot touch our Bitcoins, they can severely limit the way that people purchase them. And so if suddenly all of
Or
these
they could just
exchanges.
make it outlawed that you can't even possess them.
Right, right. So the Bitcoin that I might have in my hardware wallet or cold storage and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, they don't have a way to access that, right? But they can make it very, very
Now,
difficult, or
now,
like you
now, let
said.
me say, they can't access mine because I lost all mine in a boating accident. So all my Bitcoin were lost in a boating accident, so they can't get to mine. So, did you lose yours in a boating accident? Also, I heard a rumor that you lost yours in a boating accident too. See, that's what you tell the IRS, just so you know.
Right,
Boating
exactly.
accident. So,
They might believe it.
but I mean, here's the thing. Let's face it. If they really want to crack down, they can put you in a room and say, hey, you got to give up your keys or whatever. Or we're locking you up. I mean, they can put you in contempt of court, right? I mean, these people say they can do what they want to do. They've got the guns, right? But here's the thing. I don't think they have incentive to do that either, because I
Right.
think that the Bitcoiners would move to another country that would welcome them with open arms and all the technology would go elsewhere. And also, I think some of the congressmen and senators and so on, I think some of them own Bitcoin now. So I don't think that, I think that ship has sailed. That's why I started talking about it in 2017. I think it got to the point at that point that that ship had kind of sailed. And I think every day that goes by that it survives, I mean, they've already talked about it in hearings and everything. That nobody has talked about banning it. I mean, there may be a few fringe folks, but for the most part, they're talking about regulating it and making sure it doesn't get out of hand as far as bad actors. But they're not talking about shutting it down. Is that your feeling at this point?
That's definitely the perception I've gotten from everything I've seen as well. The fact that they're even talking about potentially creating their own digital dollar, which obviously would be quite centralized and very different than Bitcoin. But the fact that they're looking at this and saying, hey, maybe instead of fighting it, we should try to come alongside it. Almost like with the cannabis industry, they are spending so much money to, put people in jail and to do all of this stuff to fight it. And now look at this massive revenue source they have by making it legal and regulating it. So I would imagine it's
Yeah,
it's
they should
similar.
start buying it. That's what they should do.
I think I read somewhere that I don't know if it's the IRS or the FBI is like the second largest holder of Bitcoin or
Yeah,
something
but
because of all the Silk Road. Yeah.
confiscated ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question from Tom Chamberlain. Do you think there will be one more drop before the next bull market?
So I'm not a technical analyst, but I do watch a lot of different people. A lot of different people I talk to think that we should have a dip in the next 3 to 6 months, that we probably won't see a bull run start for. at least the next few months. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
a common
usually
thread
a
I'm seeing.
year to 18 months after the halving is what has happened the last two times, right? So
Yeah.
that's what happened in the 2017 run up. I mean, the halving was in 2016, right? It didn't happen until late 2017, the big run up. So that's
Hmm.
typically, it takes a while for what they call the supply shock to permeate through everything and for people to start really realizing that the supply is this much less, right? And so that's a delayed reaction. The only people that knew about the halving are insiders pretty much. The general public out there, the general retail buyers and all them, they don't know about the halving. It's going to take a while for all of that to permeate through the system to where, uh-oh, we don't have as many Bitcoin now, right? And then if people start holding the Bitcoin that they have in anticipation of a run-up, if you get more and more strong hands, right, then again, that's less Bitcoin on the market because here's the thing, the new Bitcoin that's minted is a small portion of the Bitcoin that's being sold. So let's not confuse people that just because you cut it in half doesn't mean that it's a super supply shock to the system because there's still the vast majority of the Bitcoin that is sold is Bitcoin that's held by other people that are just selling it on exchanges. It's not the new minted Bitcoin. But what the cut in the newly minted Bitcoin does is it gets a lot of the people that are holders to anticipate that run up and to start getting stronger and stronger hands. And then when the run up starts happening, then their hands get even stronger, right? Because, hey, I'm not going to sell, it's running up, right? And then other people start hearing about that and they start wanting to buy. And now you've got that buying pressure. And of course, there's a very limited supply of this stuff. It's still not that liquid. There's not a ton of it out there for sale. And so that's why you can get a huge run up quickly, right? In that kind of a scenario. So let's say here, somebody also, Chi-Town says, Craig lost his Bitcoin and his hoodie in a speedboat accident off the coast of Sarasota. That's exactly where I lost it. Absolutely. So we've got divers that are trying to find it, but so far no luck. Did you hear about the guy in the UK that lost his hard drive to his wallet? It's like $100 million worth of Bitcoin or something. Did
Ooh,
you
I
hear
haven't heard
about
that
that? Yeah,
particular one, but I've heard quite a few stories
years
where people.
ago, years and years
Mm.
ago, right? He had a hard drive with a ton of Bitcoin on it, and he threw away the laptop or whatever. And he spent years in that landfill trying to find that laptop. And I think other people have tried to find that laptop. It's got a huge amount of Bitcoin on it. So, okay, Williams Watches says, I feel I gambled with Bitcoin and luckily it paid off. I think the saying goes, get out while you're ahead. I'm much happier holding money and property and gold. Williams Watches. Well, I don't. We'll see how that works out for you. And what's funny is this one guy commented on that other thread I mentioned on Facebook that, oh, these people that are talking about Bitcoin going to $1 million, someday, they're crazy. Well, here's the thing. It started out, it was pennies. Right now, it's close to $10,000. So from pennies to $10,000, from where we are now to $1 million is a much smaller increase percentage-wise. So, we'll see what happens. But this thing still has a very small market cap, very small. I think what people don't understand, Leah, is that let's say there's going to be about 18 million of these things, because a bunch of them have been lost, right? In landfills or wherever, right? So let's say there's going to be 18 million. Some people say 4 million or so have been lost, right?
Right.
Let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say there's 18 million out there. Okay, that's nothing. That's a very small number of Bitcoin for the whole world. I mean, there are something like, is it 36 million millionaires or something? I mean, it's a big number. It's growing all the time. It might be 40 million now. In any event, there are more millionaires than there are Bitcoin to go around. Each millionaire can't even own one Bitcoin, one whole Bitcoin, if they were totally distributed, right? And they aren't. So what people I don't think are putting in perspective here is this is a very limited item. So if, and this is the big if it becomes popular worldwide and more mainstream, there's not enough of it to go around. So those people that have multiple Bitcoin are going to be sitting pretty, I think. I really believe that. And what Adam Meister told me years ago, I said, listen, really, what's the number of Bitcoin that somebody should have to be financially secure in the future later on? And he said 21. He just picked that number. He said, there's 21 million Bitcoin. You should have 21 of them, right? I said, okay, good. Sounds good, right? So that's what I recommended, that members of I did recommend it to members of my immediate family and so on. I didn't recommend it to friends back in the day. But I said, get at least 21 of them and set them aside, right?
Wow.
And I still think that if you have 21, you're going to be in really, really good shape. And now the more time goes by, I think even if you have one or two, I don't think I'd want to have just one. I think I'd want to have at least two. Have an extra, right? Have one set aside for what, have an extra for the house and the boat or whatever, right?
Right.
And so, but I really think that you're not going to need a ton of these. But I'd want a few, right? But I think that's where we're headed. What do you think? Can you give me some play devil's advocate? Where am I wrong here?
Well, one thing that I would want to say to Williams watches and to kind of counter what you're not counter, but talk to what you're saying is that I really do think that people should invest based on their own risk tolerance and based on what they're comfortable with. And so I'm very bullish on the future of Bitcoin. And so I feel okay having a much higher percentage of my asset allocation in Bitcoin than maybe other people would. And so if, like Williams watches, you feel more confident in property and gold, then there's nothing wrong with that. But kind of to what you're saying, Craig, just about having a percentage, I think that it's almost silly not to at this point, looking at how it's been the best performing asset of the last 10 years, looking at all the development, everything that's happening, at least having a percentage so you can still sleep at night. You don't feel so worried about the price of Bitcoin, but you've got a piece of it in case things do go crazy and you can be excited about that.
There you go. And Tom Chamberlain says, I only bought BTC so I didn't feel insulted by Craig calling me a no-coiner. Well, there you go. Absolutely. And Lance says, Craig, do you buy Ethereum or Litecoin? Years ago, I had some Ethereum and I sold it. And I had some Litecoin and I sold it. And I really, back in the day, I thought that there might be a place for another project, if you will, another decentralized platform, if you will, something similar to Bitcoin. I thought there would be a place for it, but I don't believe so anymore. And I know, Leah, you still think there might be a place. so there are there are two camps on that. There are those of us that just don't see it because I don't see the incentive. I don't see an organization that would want to put the horsepower into creating something like that without having control. And if they have control, then it's not Bitcoin. And that's the whole point of Bitcoin, is nobody has control, right? And so I don't see a project that is as good as Bitcoin from a standpoint of as robust as it is, as decentralized as it is, and as hard-coded as it is. Hard 21 million cap, just robust. I don't want something that people can get together and change it. I don't want that. I don't want something that is malleable in my money. I want hard money. That's why gold is so respected and has been for thousands of years, because it's so freaking hard. And Bitcoin, you could make the argument, is harder than gold. And so, because gold, they're going to be taking it out of the ground forever, and they might get it off of asteroids or whatever, right? And Bitcoin is a hard cap. It's the only thing out there that is a tradable commodity, if you will, that has a worldwide presence, that I can trade from me to you, that's really a bearer bond, if you will, that is a hard cap like that, and that nobody can come along and change it. I don't think you can say that about any of these other projects. So I got rid of my Ethereum, I get rid of the Litecoin, and I said, no, I'm just going to hold Bitcoin. And that was, I think, around 2016, maybe early 2017. Maybe I sold the last of my Ethereum and said, no, this isn't going to happen. So let's see. Tom says, Lance asking Craig if he owns those is like asking if he has a Tudor. We have a thing on this channel. Tudor watches is the low-cost Rolex, right?
Oh,
It's
okay.
their low-cost brand, and I never recommend anybody buy one of those. So yeah, there's a little thing on the channel about that.
Got it.
So Williams says, Williams Watches says, I do still have a few BTC, Craig. I did hold them as I bought so cheap, so I think we are all on the same page. Good. Stash them away and don't lose them in a boating accident. You'll be good. Now, Carlos, I've been trying to convince. He's down in Panama, and he's rolling in dough. You know, he's got $150,000 worth of watches or some sort of ridiculous thing. You know, that these guys, we talk a lot about watches on this channel, so just be, you
I
know.
can tell.
But here's the thing. These guys have money, so I'm saying, hey, take a little bit of that money. Instead of buying that next watch, buy a Bitcoin or two, right? And some of them are doing it. So Carlos says, I like the tech side and some of the monetary policy concepts, but to me, this still sounds like tulip mania, with the difference that tulips are nice to look at. Yes, it's scarce, but smoke to me. See, Carlos, I think you're going to come around, though, if it lasts and lasts and lasts. If it goes through, I'll tell you what, Carlos, let's make a deal. If it goes through another halving successfully, 2024, and things are still going along nicely. You know, the tulip mania lasted, it was very quick. It was a flash, and it was like Beanie Babies, right? Leah's too young to know about Beanie Babies. But in any event, these crazes that come along where something just gets ridiculously valuable and all, and it's literally a bubble, you know, and it all goes up. And you cannot describe Bitcoin as a bubble. You really can't. Just because it ran up in 2017, obviously there was irrational exuberance, and a lot of people were buying that shouldn't have been, that didn't know what they were doing, and so on and so forth. They bought at the wrong time. But actually not a lot of people, because it only stayed up high for a very short period of time. And so really, the vast majority of people that have bought Bitcoin are up right now, are in the black right now. And so I really don't think you can look at this timeline and you can look at the adoption that's going on. And let's pull up this thing by Tudor. Let's pull
Yeah.
up this article, because this is really important. Let me go just to you. Let me see here. Okay, there you go. And we've got Leah up in the corner there, and we've got this article, why Paul Tudor Jones sees a bright future for Bitcoin. Now, I have to read this quote. And this guy is a billionaire hedge fund investor. This guy is very respected on Wall Street. He's one of the early hedge fund guys that was very successful. I think he's worth like $5 billion or something. So listen to what he said. He said, quote, the best profit maximizing strategy is to own the fastest horse. Okay, and he goes on to say, if I am forced to forecast, my bet is it will be Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin's going to be the fastest horse. So this guy is no joke. Okay, so go ahead and Google it and learn about Paul Tudor Jones. And here's the way I look at this sort of thing. And I'm going to put you back full screen here, Leah, or side by side with me. Let's see if we can figure this out. All right, there we go. This is the way I look at this. There are a lot of very, very smart people in this space. And there are a lot of smart investors, like the gentleman we just talked about. I'm not going to second guess them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not that smart. I'm not going to second guess these people. I mean, some of the people that we follow on Twitter. Who's the guy with the cowboy hat? You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, Jimmy Song?
Song,
Or
yeah, Jimmy
yeah.
Song. I mean, you know, how smart is that guy? I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? And so if these people are putting time and effort and horsepower into this thing, and look at the organizations that are setting up mining operations. Look at the literally hundreds of millions of dollars that they invest in some of those huge operations. I mean, this is not peanuts that they're putting into this thing. And do they think it's going to crash tomorrow if they're investing all this money in mining the stuff? I mean, I don't think so. And then you look at companies like BlockFi that are coming up and all the
Yep.
money that's being invested in them. You look at the GBTC, whatever that Bitcoin trust is that you can buy on
Yep.
in your 401k or whatever. You look at
Mhm.
how many new customers they've got coming in, how many signups they're getting. You look at Coinbase, you look at how they're growing as far as the number of people that are coming in as customers and buying this scarce thing. All the data that I see shows that this thing is not going away, that this thing is growing and getting more powerful all the time. So, am I going to go against all of that? What do you think? What do you think, Leah?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Paul Tudor Jones because I think that might be the biggest news we've had in a while. I mean, obviously aside from the halving in the Bitcoin industry because that's huge. I've been saying this for a long time. As people are saying, well, for mass adoption, we need more mentions in the media and we need more merchants to accept Bitcoin. And I think all of those things add up and are important. But I think what would make even more impact is if people started investing about 1% of their portfolio in Bitcoin and if that became kind of common practice. And so to see Paul Tudor Jones come out and say that, and now all of his, I would say, associates and people that look to him for advice will likely feel like it's
They
risky not to now.
they all have cover now. If
Hmm.
they do it and it goes wrong, they can say, "Well, I was just following Paul." I mean, they've got some cover, right? They didn't
Hmm.
have that before.
Yep.
And Michael Novogratz made this comment in an interview when he was talking about Paul investing, and he said that's the biggest thing here. The reason this is a big deal is this is
Hmm.
going to give fund managers all over the world and folks that manage private money, estate managers and all that. It's going to give them cover to take another look at this thing. And then if another one comes in and then another one comes in, he uses the term, he says the herd is coming, right? That's what he's been saying for years, right? And it's funny in this recent interview, he says, I've been saying for years that the herd was coming, but now it looks like they really are coming, right? So it's going to be very interesting this year, I think, and into early next year is going to be the real test. Let's see if it's similar to the 2016 halving. We actually won't know for sure until, let's say, late spring of next year, like a
Hmm.
year and a month or two from now. That's when the big run up in 2017 started like late spring ish. And then, we had some running up and a little down, a little run, and then it went crazy, like
Hmm.
October, November, December, something like that. Uh, so I remember Thanksgiving that year, right? We were all talking about it. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, how high is it going to go and all this stuff, right? And and people that invested in it that I knew that invested in it and that were sitting at a profit, I said, well, here's the thing. If you just bought it and you're sitting at a big profit, remember, it's a short-term capital gain. You're going to pay a big chunk of that in taxes. So, yeah, go ahead and take it if you want. Take your profit if you want.
Yep.
But if you want to look more long term, I would just hold it, right? And now if they could have sold at 15,000, now it's sitting at below 10, right? Well, maybe they should have taken the 15, right? Even paying your taxes, you'd still be ahead. But if we have another run up and it goes to 35 or 40 or 50, right? You're going to kick yourself if you sold it at 15. So, yeah, I mean there are no easy answers here. Let's see. And Mike asked the question. Here it is on point. He says, "Hello everybody. What is your sell point? Hold or accumulate?" Well, I mean, for me, I'm not planning on selling because I don't need the money, and so I'm not planning on selling ever. So I have no reason to sell. I mentioned in part one of this show, I'll sell other stuff first. I have other assets that
Right.
aren't performing as well as Bitcoin. It will be the last thing to be sold, right?
Mhm.
Why on earth would I sell it when I've got, fiat laying around, right? That's going down in value. So, what is your, do you have a sell point?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to you in the sense that if I needed the money and I had other assets that weren't performing as well, I would certainly consider selling those before selling any Bitcoin. But I think for me, I would consider taking a profit at maybe the $100,000 mark, like maybe use
There we
that
go.
to like,
That's good.
but I'm pretty happy sitting on Bitcoin until then. And even then I would only want it to be a percentage, but that's what's great is a
You
percentage
could
would
you
go
could
a
just
lot
borrow
further.
against it on BlockFi. You don't have to sell it. You could just borrow against it and keep it.
I'm pretty excited about BlockFi. I just signed up during they just had that big,
Their promotion, yeah.
$100 promotion. So
Hmm.
I was kind of eyeing them before and I finally signed up. So yeah, I'm excited to check them out, and the fact that you can earn 6% back on your Bitcoin is pretty interesting too.
Now here is another question. I'm not saying I would do this, but what would you think if someone were to take out a large loan to buy Bitcoin?
Uh,
Okay, so I'm probably the wrong guy to ask that because I don't believe in borrowing money for anything. I'm the idiot that doesn't even borrow money to buy real estate. I pay cash for my real estate.
mm,
And so I don't borrow money for any purpose ever. So yeah, I wouldn't say do that. But then again, if I was a no coiner and I had a very marginal uh, portfolio, in other words, I had nothing to count on. I was like up against it, and I could figure out a way to get just one Bitcoin and squirrel it away somehow. I don't know. I don't know what I would do, but it would go against the way I operate, which is I don't ever borrow money. I would still encourage whoever that is just to save up, save and scrimp, and pay cash. So, yeah. Let's see. Williams watches Carlos. It can be very lucrative, though. I have done very well with gold, buying only at scrap price and melting it down into bullion bars. Interesting. He buys
hmm.
gold and melts it down.
Wow.
And let's see. Wags, in fact, I have some investment in blockchain tech. Carlos is the opposite of me. He believes in the blockchain tech and not Bitcoin. I believe in Bitcoin and not the blockchain tech. I don't see any use for blockchain tech other than Bitcoin, and nobody showed me any use case for it. It makes no sense to spend all that freaking money on a blockchain. I mean, it's very expensive to have a blockchain that can't be 51% attacked. You need a lot
Mhm,
of hash rate, right? Otherwise, it can
mhm.
be 50%, 51% attacked, right? So how do you get all that hash power? Somebody's got to pay for it, right? Why would somebody
Yeah.
pay for all that if they're not getting something out of it? And if they're getting something out of it, it means they've got control. Therefore, it means it's not decentralized. Therefore, why not just have a spreadsheet? So if somebody can answer that question to me, then I'll understand how there's a application for this. But otherwise, I just don't get it. Let's see. The whole point of Bitcoin is you're creating something of value. There's an incentive for that miner to maintain that blockchain, a
Mhm.
tremendous incentive. How are you going to have that incentive if you don't have that? If you don't have that Bitcoin? I mean, because first of all, these other things aren't going to be worth that much. These other altcoins, they ain't worth that much. So why in the hell is a miner going to spend a whole bunch of money mining these things if they're worth 10 cents or whatever? Whatever they're worth, right? I don't
There's a
know.
lot of altcoins that are, we talked about Ethereum and Litecoin earlier that are worth more than 10 cents, right? So I think a lot of these miners are looking at kind of the shorter term gains. And so if it becomes more profitable for them to switch over to mining an altcoin, then they'll do that because they're likely selling to fund their operations anyway. And so, I mean, it,
Yeah,
it makes sense
yeah,
that.
and they could do that for a period of time. They come and go, and they ebb and flow. I've seen a bunch of them come and go over the years. So yeah, um, but like Paul Tudor Jones says, bet on the horse that's going to win. That's what you do. Let's see. And let's see. I hear I hear buy side analysis. Let me hear the sell side analysis, Mike in the house. That's why I just asked her. I asked her if she'd sell and at what price. I've already said I'm not selling. So, I mean, here's the thing. Here's the problem is if it starts crashing, if something is really bad happening with Bitcoin, it's going to crash pretty quick. And you might not have enough time to bail out. Even if you have a price that you want to bail out at, even if you have a stop loss or whatever, I mean, it can crash so fast that it can, it might not even sell at that number, right? And so it is very risky. It is. It just is, right? But obviously, those of us that own it and hold it are in for the long term, and we don't care about these tremendous fluctuations in price because we think in the long term it's going to be higher than it was. And the track record is that it's doing well, right? But if something terrible happens, it's at risk. It's an investment that's at risk. If you buy a house at the seashore and the hurricane comes through, right, your whole house can be wiped out. So,
Right.
I mean, anything can happen with an investment. Obviously, real estate is more secure than a lot of other forms of investment. And that's why it's always a good idea to have some real estate, I think, even though it's getting very expensive to maintain and pay the taxes on real estate
Yep.
is getting to be a real problem. But it's very, very stable, right? It can be. But Bitcoin, the thing about Bitcoin is you have that potential huge upside. There are very few investments that have that potential huge upside that Bitcoin has. If there is one, please tell me about it, and I'll invest in it too. But I can't think of any, and they'd have to be very, very high risk, right? So why would I do that? Let's see, what is Mike saying here? I think you should be financially in good shape to invest in BTC, or you will be more prone to sell at the wrong time. Very good point. That's right. If you don't need the money and the money's set aside and you can wait, the best time to sell anything is when you don't need to sell it. Whether that be a house, a car, a wristwatch, I don't care what it is. If you don't have to sell it and somebody comes along, hey, I'd like to have that thing, right? And now you're in a strong position because you don't have to sell anyway, and they want it. You're in a much better negotiating position. The things that I've sold over the years that I've done the best on are always situations where I didn't have to sell, and for some reason somebody wanted that thing, whether it be a domain name or what it is. And in that way you do better. That's a very good point. All right, so we've hogged a lot of your time here, Leah. Any other pearls of wisdom that you want to share with us?
I just want to say thanks for having me on, and it's been really a lot of fun to get to chat with you and kind of go back and forth and talking about Bitcoin. And I've actually learned a little bit about Rolexes the last two videos.
Oh, okay. So we gotta finalize that. Okay. So what's the recommendation? Should they buy a Rolex Submariner at about let's say about $9,000, or should they try to get a hold of one Bitcoin? What do you think they should do?
So, as someone who doesn't know much about the resale value in the market of Rolexes, the only
Okay.
question.
Let me tell you, they hold their value well. They hold their value
Okay.
well. They typically don't go up in price much. I mean, they might keep up with inflation, right, over time. Some models do better than others, but they do hold their value. One thing that people say about Rolexes is, I can always sell it and get my money out, right? But you're not going to 10x your money, okay?
Right.
I mean, so that's the backstory. And obviously it's very stable. It's a thing you're holding in your hand, right? It's not as speculative, right? I mean, it's there. It's a real thing, and you can always sell it for something. It's not going to go to zero, right?
Right.
So there's the backstory on Rolex. So knowing that, What would be your recommendation?
I think it would depend on maybe your goals. And so, if you're looking for something that you can kind of put your money in that's a hedge, like you said, it holds its value. I mean, maybe almost similar to gold in the sense that it's probably not going to spike crazy, but it should hold its value.
Hmm.
So, if you want to be more conservative, that potentially might be a better option. But if you're looking for the growth potential, I would just say ask yourself, do you think this Rolex will be worth more in 5 years, or do you think this Bitcoin will be worth more in 5 years? And if you're looking for the growth upside, I would argue that probably Bitcoin will overall be at a higher price point than that Rolex. So again, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for out of the investment, if it's a hedge or if it's a growth
Hmm.
perspective. But if it's growth, I would think Bitcoin.
So there you go, folks. We'll check this video like 4 years from now, and we'll see how well you would have done if you'd have bought the Rolex versus buying the Bitcoin. Time will tell the tale here, right? That's the only
Yeah.
thing. That's the only way we'll know is time will tell the tale. Okay, a couple more comments here, and then we'll let you go. Mike says, "Always good to learn and be informed. Thanks for your time, Leah."
Oh, thank you.
And Williams Watches says, "Thanks for your time today." And Eduardo says, "Rolex equals the Bitcoin of watches." There you go. And let's see. Mike says, he says hi to Williams Watches. And Eduardo says, but you can enjoy the Rolex. Absolutely. It's a tool. You
There
can
you
wear it.
go.
You can enjoy it. Absolutely. You can't really like hold the Bitcoin in your hand and pet it. You can't really do that with the Bitcoin, unfortunately.
But
Hmm.
you could actually lose your Rolex in a boat accident.
That's right. You can lose both in a boat accident. Yes, I lost all my Bitcoin, unfortunately, in a boating accident. And you can do that with a Rolex if you're not careful. So there you go. And Carlos says thank you as well. Well, thank you for calling in. We should do this again sometime. And I'll tell you what we should do sometime is we should try to get a panel together, maybe three other people, because four people on Skype makes a good 1, 2, 3, 4, on the screen. So
Mhm.
maybe we should try to get a Bitcoin panel together and have a panel discussion. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'd love that. I love panels. I think it's really fun when you can just get a bunch of people together. Everyone's got a little different perspectives and way to talk about things. So, yeah, I'd love to. I think that'd
Why
be
don't
really
you
fun.
think about who would make sense? You know a lot more people in the Bitcoin space than I do. Why don't you think about who would make sense? And we should probably have one person on there that's an altcoin fanatic, so that they can make the case for altcoins.
Perfect.
So there you go. Okay, so let's see two more here real quick. Cheat Town says you can't wear the Rolex if you want the best return on it. In other words, you can't scratch it up.
Mm, that's
Serve
fair.
says the answer Craig wanted was buy Bitcoin and Grand Seiko. Okay, well we'll talk about Grand Seiko as another option, competitive option, absolutely. And Cheat Town, good point. Okay, that's true, Cheat Town. But realistically, how much would you lose if you wore it? Now they're going to talk about how much you lose if you wear the watch. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for calling in. And I'm going to cross link these two. So I'll let you know when that's all linked together. And then maybe we can both reshare so people can watch that weren't able to participate live. And Tom Chamberlain says, "Don't wrap Leah up." Well, do you have another question for her? Put it in the chat real quick. If you got a question, she's a busy lady. So, by the way, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was, trying to think. Was it Ben Shapiro's Sunday Special? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was Ben Shapiro's Sunday Special. And this guy says he was talking about equality, right,
Mm.
and all this stuff, and he said, the problem is that there is no equality. He says, for example, more attractive people are generally speaking more successful than less attractive people. And he said, so what do you do if you're not as attractive, right? Do you just give up, right? I mean, that wouldn't make sense, right? I didn't give up. I'm not attractive, right? So you just do the best with what you have, I think was his message, right? And so just because things don't seem like the cards are stacked in your favor, hey, just shuffle the deck around a little bit and make a move, right? And here you go, you can grab a Bitcoin and you'll be ahead of most people out there, because most people are not going to own a whole Bitcoin 10 years from now. I can guarantee you that. The vast majority of people will not have one whole Bitcoin. Okay, let's see if there's any questions in here. It's about a 20-second delay. That's
Okay.
why I had to fill a little time in there. Let's see. For these OCD collectors, you can't even take the stickers off. In other words, they can't take the stickers off the watch, or they won't sell for as much money. Okay, Eduardo, then you just buy two, wear one, and store the second. I don't know if I'm getting through to these guys. Let's see, Cheetown, California. Sounds like you're talking about me, says Williams Watches. The Rolex can still hold its value if you wear it, but you have to be really careful not to scratch it, says Lance. Okay, all right. I think that's all we have, and you know how to find her. And I'm going to, after you go, I'll show you all your websites again. And
Oh, well, thank you.
and so definitely send her questions on social media. She will respond to you, and because I know you guys are going to think of questions that you didn't bother to ask right now, so feel free to ask her on social media. That's okay with you, Leah?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Feel
Definitely.
free to.
Especially if you mentioned that you saw us on the show here, so I can make sure I
She'll
respond
give
for
you
sure.
special VIP treatment. There you go. All right. That's great. All right. Well, thanks for calling in, and we'll do it again. Try to set up a panel. It'd be fun. I think we should have reoccurring Bitcoin discussions on the channel, because we can't just always talk about watches and clothes and travel and all the stuff that we normally talk about. We got to talk about some different kinds of things sometimes. So.
Well, Craig, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks to everyone who's been live in the audience. You guys have been really fun. I've had lots of great questions and comments. So please do come find me on social media and say hi. I'd love to connect with you guys. And just thanks again, Craig, for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you. There you go, folks. Just like that. Just like that. You can call in too to the show. And make sure you follow Leah on all social media. Let's do a time check here. See how we're doing. Whoa. We're almost up on an hour. We're almost up on an hour, folks, live on the show. And I'm going to, real quick, as I promised, I'm going to show you her channels again. This is that video that she did recently, that really funny one. You definitely want to see that. And there's the part one of this show. I'm going to cross-link these. There's, of course, the Rolex we were talking about. Should you buy that? Should you buy that? Or should you buy a Bitcoin? And then this was the article we were talking about, Paul Tudor Jones. And this is her Twitter. And that is Leah's webpage. Leah's webpage. So there you go, folks. Just like that. In the next show, I would love to hear when BTC becomes more of a currency than an investment. Mike, hopefully if we do that panel thing, hopefully we can get somebody that's an expert in the Lightning Network, which is being built on top of Bitcoin, that is designed for very fast payments and small payments, right, can be done very fast at very low cost. That is in the works, so that is going to be super cool if they get that going, and that would be a great way for payments to be made on top of Bitcoin, if you will, the Lightning Network. Eduardo, if you're worried about wearing the watch, Lance, then it's probably too much watch for your economic conditions. Oh, I agree with that. My goal is to be able to wear Rolexes as if it was a Hamilton khaki. That's right. You should buy watches to wear and enjoy. I'm all about that. Lance is in the house. I'm very careful with my watches, but still enjoy them. Also, you would enjoy to wear a watch that. Also, would you enjoy to wear a watch that was covered with scratches? I know I wouldn't. I don't know. I love wearing my 231 has scratches. Pretty fine scratches all over it, and then a lot of scratches on the clasp. And of course, I still wear it. It still looks great. Yeah, that's not, to me, that's not a downside. I absolutely wear my watches. Life is too short to not wear them. Time for the wristwatch after show. View serve is in the house. Lance, not a dress watch, but no, but you don't wear those. Okay, and sort of places to cause scratches. Okay. Today I had a great day. The gardener came back to work after 2 months of quarantine. Oh, good, good. He got everything all squared away there. By the way, how are things down in Panama? Give us a report. Let's see, but light scratches yeah, I think you meant tool watch is a must. And lots of Rolex are tool watches. And I do not have an affair with the gardener. Mike says, get that next Bitcoin show up sooner than later, please. Always willing to learn. Okay, we'll do our best. Let Leah know. Reach out to Leah on social media, Girl Gone Crypto, and let her know that you want her to get that panel together, because I'm going to deputize her to get the panel together. Michael says, is Steve going to do another live show with that guy in Japan for 60th? He's doing a show this Thursday. I don't know if it's that guest or not. Maybe he'll get him back on, but he is planning on doing a show. And hopefully we've solved the streaming problem, because we've been going almost an hour, actually over an hour, because we started about 2 minutes early. By the way, here's the stunner. Stunner on wrist. Stunner alert. Yeah, and I'm wearing it. But it's not in the box. I'm wearing that stunner. And here's the thing. Even with my Date 8, I wore it a lot. I didn't beat it up. I mean, it had some fine little scratches on it, and, it had a patina, if you will. But it looked great after 19 years of regular use, not babying it. And I'm sure that this watch will hold up fine to regular use. These watches are meant to be worn, folks. I really think they are. Carlos says opening slowly. Okay, good to know. Let's see. Lance Loengart, if you have to be so careful with a watch on the wrist, it's fact you don't get full enjoyment of the piece. Trust me, I've been there. I hear you. I hear you. Of course, back in the day, excuse me, when we bought Rolexes, they really weren't considered jewelry as much as they are now. They were more like, it was a nice watch, don't get me wrong. It was a watch that people wanted. It was definitely, up there as far as a top tier watch that people wanted. And they were, very, for the day, they were the watch to buy for sport purposes. If you wanted something waterproof and all, you bought the Rolex, right? You actually had a problem if you bought some other watches. Sometimes they would leak and they wouldn't, they wouldn't hold up well. So Rolexes were a good sport watch, a good tool watch, if you will. But they really weren't thought of as something that you pampered or that you left at home in the box or something. I mean, people just wore them. I mean, they didn't baby them at all. At least the people I knew. So I think this babying the watches thing is the last 10 or 20 years. I think that's come into vogue. I don't think it was back in the day. I don't think that was the way it was done. But just food for thought. I'm all for not babying watches, but I wouldn't wear an expensive tool watch in a rugged situation. Well, I mean, I don't take mine off. I wear it in whatever situation. My 231. I'm certainly not going to take the watch off. Let's see. There are tragedies in life: never getting your Rolex, and never getting your Rolex, and never wearing your Rolex. The latter is more worse. There you go. Eduardo, I sold the Breitling and Tag 1500. I still have the rest. Okay. Tomorrow I will be taking the serologic antibody COVID test just in case. Not expensive. Okay, cool. $29. Williams watches, that is it. You can wear a watch a lot. taking care, but not overly obsessing or not scratching. Yeah. I tell you one thing is, I am naturally not that hard on my watches. Like, I don't bump them into doorknobs and things like that. There are people that just, like bang their watch on things all the time, right? And I fortunately have not had that issue. I tend to not bang my watch on things that often. So if you're a banger, if you bang your watch a lot, then yeah, that can be a problem. Let's see. Okay. What do you think is a superior movement for a one watch solution, the 9F or the 9R? Refresh my memory. What's the 9R? What's the difference between the two? I'm not sure what they are. Are they both quartz movements, or is the R a mechanical movement? I'm not hip on what the 9R is, so let me know. Did Lance send in a picture of a watch today? I will wear my OP as a tool watch in a rugged situation. They are built for that now more than ever. There you go. Eduardo, I would trust a Rolex in a rugged situation versus another brand. Absolutely. Let's see. I'll send you one now. I've developed reflexes for keeping my watch out of danger. Views serve. Let's see. Eduardo, a Rolex GMT went to the moon and back. Check out the last Watchfinder video. There you go. Let's see. 9R is spring drive. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're fine. Either one is very robust. I think a spring drive is very robust, as is the 9F. My guess is the 9F is even more robust than the 9R spring drive, but I don't think you're going to have a problem with either one. I think you're going to be fine with either one. I have both, and I don't think I'm going to have any problem with this spring drive and this 18 karat gold stunner. I think it's going to be fine. That's my guess. I'll let you guys know. Trust me, on this channel, you guys will be the first to know if I have a problem with one of these watches. You will be the first to know. Because I can tell you right now, I would not be a happy camper. I do not spend this kind of money for a watch and expect it to give trouble. I expect it to be superlative. Superlative. So there you go. It's rude to be yawning on the channel, but I'm hungry. One watch, a used HS36, and invest the rest of the money. There you go. That's a good move. Cheetown says, Craig, have you worn the diver on a strap before? No, I have not. And it is so comfortable on that bracelet that I don't think I need to go there. That bracelet is fantastic, so I don't think I need to go there. Eduardo, do the spring drive movements have to be serviced by Seiko, or can an independent watchmaker work? I wouldn't have anybody service it. I would wear it for decades, and then if it finally quits, I would definitely have Grand Seiko service it. That's what I would do. If it's a Grand Seiko spring drive, I would have Grand Seiko service it. I would not take that to an independent watch guy. No way. Kyle's in the house. I can't wait for the smaller spring drive watches. I hope they come eventually. There you go. By the way, Kyle, when are we going to get a new West Coast report? I'd like to get another report on that skate park, an update. Have they taken the sand out of that skate park yet? That would be interesting to know. We just need a report. Lance is in the house. He sent a photo. Oh, jeez. Let's take a look. Let's do a time check while we take a look at this photo. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, yeah, this is a good-looking piece. I wonder how thick it is, though. Wonder how thick it is. Interesting. Cool. I like the red GMT hand. I think it's cool. My guess is, though, it's going to be kind of thick. That's my guess on that one. Let's see. It's nice and cloudy in Southern California. Okay. Eduardo says, hey, Craig, so the OP date I unboxed on the channel runs about plus 10 seconds a day. Should I leave it or get it serviced? Depends on how much that bothers you. Fast is obviously better than slow. I would see if it's consistent. If it's consistently 10 seconds a day, that tells me that it might just be able to be adjusted a little bit if it's consistent, right? But hard to say. Carlos says spammer alert. Okay. Good move, Carlos. And let's see. Would you describe Bitcoin as a currency or an investment? Tim McDonald. I would call it a store of value. I would say it's more like gold, more like a digital form of gold. And I think that the payment system, the Litecoin, not Litecoin, the Lightning Network, it's being built on top of it, might make it more useful as a payment rail. But it's still a great way to send money around the country, around the world, actually. It's still cheaper than using like Western Union or something like that. If I need to send money like from here to Argentina or something, it's a very good tool to use for that. And I'm sure some people do use it for those purposes. And for the unbanked to be able to have something of value that they can move, back and forth amongst themselves. But I think generally speaking, for the most part at this point, most people that are buying it as an investment, as a store of value, as a hedge against inflation. With all the money printing that's going on now and everything, I would say that that's probably why most people are buying it, is a store of value and a hedge against inflation. I don't like the lug guards on that Omega. Okay. You mean the crown guard? It does look a little funny. The crown guard on the right side there does look a little funny, but that might just be the way the picture's taken. Let's see. I used to like that Seamaster, but I think the traditional non-GM2 version looks cleaner is the icon. Okay. Let's see. Kyle says we can call in this week. I'll double check with Brett and Leslie and confirm with you via email. Good. Eduardo's in the house. All right. Thanks, Craig. I'll keep tracking it and I'll see what my watchmaker says. Turns out that my watchmaker is the best watchmaker when it comes to Rolex in my province here in Canada. Good to hear. I have a 20-year-old Seamaster Pro, much thinner than today's model. There you go. Yep, I like the thinner ones. I'm with you. You serve Craig. Did you have to buy the email address CraigShipp@gmail.com, or was it not already taken when you signed up? It was available when I signed up. I signed up very early, back when it was in beta, when Gmail was in beta. So it was easy to get your name at that point at gmail.com. So yeah, I just got it. I just grabbed it. I tend to try to grab CraigShip on every platform that I can, just so that I have it. Carlos is in the house. I would say it depends on your objective. In my opinion, in Craig's case, seems an investment. There you go. Absolutely. Mike, what color is the dial on your Seamaster? Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I enjoyed the show. It was a good show. I think it was informative. I think Leah did a fantastic job. I think she's professional. I think she's a good addition to the channel as far as a guest from time to time. And I think I'm going to let her know that she's always welcome to pop into the chat. And if she has an update, a Bitcoin update that she wants to, call in, a brief call in to give us a little update, that she'll be welcome to come in. I think she's a smart young lady, and she's in motion. She's making things happen. She's in motion. So, with that, let me show her website one more time. Okay, it is leahlovescrypto.com, leahlovescrypto.com. Okay, and find all her social media and give her a like, share, comment, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll do one more time check, and then we're going to wrap this puppy up. Yeah, Durr would say not to wrap it up. He'd say you got to keep this puppy going. But at some point, you have to wrap these puppies up. And Kyle says, good show. Thanks to Craig and the crypto girl. There you go. All right, everybody. Buy and hold Bitcoin. Buy and hold Bitcoin. Not financial advice, but that's what I'm doing. Thanks for watching. Hey, click subscribe. Click that bell.